Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Creative Forces webinar series. This is the second in our most recent around community engagement. And today we're going to be speaking about community outreach and partnership strategies. And our moderator today will be Hannah Jacobson Blumenfeld.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today on our webinar. And thank you especially to our panelists. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. My name is Hannah Jacobson Blumenfeld, and I am the Community Engagement Manager for Creative Forces. So I will be doing just a little bit of introduction to Creative Forces and to our Community Connections projects. Our panelists all come from these Community Connections projects, and then we will jump right into questions and hearing from them. So Creative Forces, the NEA Military Healing Arts Network, is an initiative of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with the U.S. Departments of Defense and Veterans Affairs that seeks to improve the health, well-being, and quality of life for military and veteran populations exposed to trauma, as well as their families and caregivers. Creative Forces is managed in partnership with Americans for the Arts, the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine, and Mid-America Arts Alliance. Our Community Connections project began in 2019 as the community engagement pillar of our Creative Forces initiative, which also encompasses clinical and capacity work. They are all over the country in locations near our clinical sites. We started with 11 of them, and their projects were varied and diverse, but all helped us to draw towards outcomes that are also informing the National Endowment for the Arts grant program. Some of these outcomes include social connectedness and resilience, and they also go toward improved mental health or quality of life, increased sense of community, improved artistic skills, increased empowerment, capacity and commitment to serve military-connected communities, communication with clinical providers, collaboration among arts organizations, and increased community awareness of the benefits of the arts. So we are going to be covering lots of those today, I think, with our panelists who come from a variety of different kinds of organizations, from a performing arts center to a local arts agency to a state arts agency, and have really different perspectives, but all have really incredible things to share and have been doing this work for a long time. So I'm very excited to introduce them. Before I do, I just want to make sure to let you know, again, you can put your questions in the chat anytime throughout. We will have about 10 minutes at the end, and I'll make sure to direct your questions to our participants then. So thank you again for being here, and excited to kick this off. So I'd love to introduce Glenda Carino. She's been the communications manager and legislative liaison at the Washington State Arts Commission, or ArtsWA, for 7 years. Since being appointed to the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee for Washington's first Creative Forces Summit in 2017, Glenda has been a part of a small group working behind the scenes to craft a more integrated statewide program that involves partnerships between ArtsWA, the Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs, WDVA, and a growing cohort of cultural organizations and artists. Thanks so much for being here today, Glenda. Anna Pasquale is the resident artist for Creative Discoveries Studio, a virtual and in-person military art program hosted by the Jacksonville-Onslow Council for the Arts in North Carolina. She is also a mixed media artist and photographer who has 2 sons with her husband, a United States Marine Corps veteran. Hi, Anna, great to see you. Danielle J. Braxton is a registered and board-certified art therapist who's been practicing for 14 years and working with active duty military since 2012. Danielle is currently an art therapist with the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine in support of Creative Forces, located in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Danielle works out of the Intrepid Spirit Concussion Recovery Center on Naval Medical Center, Camp Lejeune. And in addition to her clinical practice at Lejeune, Danielle also works with the Jacksonville-Onslow Council for the Arts to support their community arts engagement programs for the military community. Hi, Danielle. And now we have Alice Santana, who came to the Strad Center in 2016, and today is the Vice President of Education and Community Engagement. She's an integral part of STRAD's outreach in Tampa, Florida, and is responsible for several successful engagement projects, most notably Vet Art Span, part of the Creative Forces NEA Military Healing Arts Network. Alice also helped fan the growth of the STRAD's Arts Education Partnership Program in 4 area counties and played a role in the creation of the Performing Arts College Fair and oversees the STRAD Center's inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility efforts. Alice previously served as Director of Artists and Musicians of Latin America, AMLA, a nonprofit connecting at-risk youth in Pennsylvania and Delaware with high-quality, hands-on cultural arts learning experiences. Thanks, Alice. And finally, Fred Johnson is a vocal performer, acclaimed jazz musician, storyteller, melodic narrative sound healing master teacher, director, author, arts educator, painter, and a United States Marine Corps veteran. He is recognized globally for his work in the health and wellness community, as well as his extensive work in international interfaith peace and reconciliation, and is a leading voice in the national conversation regarding inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Mentored by spiritual masters of the African oral and percussion legacy, Fred has been hailed as one of the true guardians of an oral tradition transplanted and nurtured to create a fusion of cultural heritage that is uniquely American and inherently African. Fred currently serves as artist in residence, community engagement, diversity, and equity specialist, and director of the Arts and Health Initiative at the David A. Straz Jr. Center for the Performing Arts in Tampa, Florida. Is there anything that Fred doesn't do? I have yet to find it. Thank you for being here. And thank you so much, all of you, for sharing your expertise and your perspectives. So I'm going to invite Alice and Fred to stay on the screen here as we kick off our questions. So excited to get started with you. I would love for you to share a little bit about how your relationship with the Veterans Administration hospitals, the VA, developed, and how that's had an impact on your outreach and programming.
Do everything well except turn that mute button off.
Always the hardest part.
Great to be with you, Hannah, and all. So our relationship with the James A. Haley VA Hospital was an integral part of our shaping and putting together our way forward with Creative Forces. The Haley VA Hospital serves a vast region of Florida, and so our approach and our engagement was really around, or it was really the byproduct of a regional meeting that had been held prior to kind of the formal shaping of the Creative Forces community component, to really find out from our area what did veterans and civilians, but primarily what did our veteran community really feel the need or the opportunities were to really come together and serve the community. And the VA hospital was the James Haley VA Hospital was really important part of that conversation. We also were reminded that the fact that there were 2 major VA hospitals in our area, and the general understanding is that there was not a bridge between the 2 of them, that they didn't really work together. So that became one of our objectives in the development of our program, was to find out ways that we could bridge that perceived gap, that we could really, through the utilization of art, find a way to bring those 2 VA hospitals together, and of course the folks that they serve, especially the outreach, the folk who have been at the VA hospitals but then we're back out in our community. We have one of the largest veteran communities in the country, and so our engagement with the VA, it really helped us. Secondly, one of the most important things is because at the VA there is this great structure of the utilization of art therapists and music and dance and visual arts. So it affords us as an arts institution to really gain an understanding and really work with those therapists so that we can more fully understand how they utilize art in the clinical setting. For instance, being a music person myself, my perception going into that conversation was that, oh great, they have They have folks there playing music. And I came to realize that in many, many instances, one of the most important things was just to get a veteran to hold the instrument, or, it wasn't about writing songs and things that I was familiar with in my world. It was really the very, very important, in many instances, beginning steps of holding a pencil, drawing a line, just being engaged with the colors, just placing the hands on the piano, or just being able to regain the motor skills of just tapping the drum. So it really awakened for us and gave us a deeper understanding of what is the relationship between what happens with art in the clinical setting and how that can apply in the work that we're able to offer, in the spaces that we're able to offer. So there's this wonderful alignment there. Our specific goal, our Creative Forces initiative, was to be a point of destination for information. We put together a website, and that website, Vet ArtsWA, was really a place where we did podcasts with veterans so veterans could tell their stories. We did podcasts with therapists so that they could explain, what is art therapy? What does that mean? How's that different than taking an acting class or taking an art class? So we really chose to be a point of destination. We had other levels of communication, and we went out into the community. We did 4 videos. One was in a hot shop at an art school. Another was just specifically a conversation with women veterans, their experiences and how art, engaged them. So we were a real resource space and a place where people could come, watch, listen, and experience through a website experience. And we were guided along the way by our colleagues at the VA. They could make us aware of resources that were out there, groups of folk who had been in the clinical setting but were now out in the community and going to smaller community centers. So they became a connector for us. It also became a way that we could begin to serve the VA hospital by some of the things that we do at our institution were filmed. And so we were able to show that. For instance, Alice was able to set up a situation so that we performed the Nutcracker. And so the Nutcracker was seen by patients at the VA hospital. So we became both a resource for them, and the VA hospital became a resource for us in terms of kind of fundamentally learning the relationship between the community arts experience and the art therapist experience. Gave us some tentacles into the community, which was incredibly helpful. And I'm also very happy to say that because we were made aware of the fact that there's a national arts competition through all the VA hospitals, we were able to collaborate with the James Haley VA Hospital in Tampa and the Bay Pines Veterans Hospital in St. Petersburg, and we hosted a showcase for those artists. So there was an ability to build a bridge, and as an institution, we've made a commitment to continue that. So it was a great partnership, a great learning experience for us, and also we then became a resource for the VA hospital to provide art services for them or to understand how to cultivate new ways to create. And then ultimately, we also developed our Vet Chat, which is kind of a national conversation. And there were members of the veteran community who found out about that and were able to come on and participate in Vet Chat. And in fact, we did have a couple of instances where we had folks that were actually in the clinical setting, albeit that was not kind of what we had done on a regular basis, but we were able to create an opportunity for some folks that were actually still in clinic to be on our Vet Chat. So a tremendous resource, a great learning tool, and a continued partner to really, continue the walk with serving our veteran community.
Thanks, Fred. I love how you talk about this always, but this kind of bidirectional partnership, that there's something that we all offer, something that we all gain. And I think that really feeds into this next question about this role that you played in connecting the two VAs in your community. I think it's really fascinating the way that you have done that. And I'm curious what that looked like sort of operationally for you all, and how you think the community connection and that community piece really played an important part in bringing those together.
Alice?
Well, I always say, because of the great foundation and trust that Fred was able to build with both of those VA hospitals and our contacts, when the Creative Arts Veterans Showcase came to light, I really appreciated that both VAs came together and said, we have a need. And it is the need to be able to give our vets the opportunity to present in a proper space for their performance, because their art matters. Traditionally, they were getting to do these performances like in lobby spaces or in hallways at the hospital, alongside the visual arts component, which was their stronger suit. And they saw, as the Performing Arts Center, you guys know how to put on performances. Could you please help us create an opportunity that marries both of these things together? And as soon as they came in to have this conversation with Fred and I, we hit the ground running with figuring out, okay, what do we need to get them? How can we get these vets in? What are all the barriers involved in this process to make this event something special for all of them? And from that day, we've now been hosting it. I want to say this is our 4th year now, Fred, working with the VAs.
Yeah.
And we've done it in person, we've done it through a pandemic, we've done it virtually, and now we're working on our 4th time figuring out how to do it live virtually. So it's a lot of adapting and collaborating and trust in this process. And it's always just beautiful to see the end product of our vets shining in these spaces that normally they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do.
It also gave us an opportunity, Hannah, to invite members of the civilian community, and even folks within our institution, who everybody was proud of the work that we were doing with the veteran community, but didn't necessarily fully understand the impact, what it felt like, what it looked like. And so we were able to invite members of our staff to come in and have the opportunity to experience it. We have also a veteran civilian, at that point it was the veteran, civilian dance ensemble, and they performed. So there were veterans and civilians performing together. The two directors of each of the VA hospitals had never really come together. They were there. They had a long conversation afterward. So it really was an opportunity for the community at large to experience folk, to really kind of feel the artistry and the joy that happened in that space. And I know that in some instances it shifted their understanding or their feeling about veterans who are in VA hospitals and who sing and who create art. So it really was a great coming together that was an awakening for a number of people.
There are some really, I think, important key things that you've brought out just now, that outreach can also mean into your own organizations or communities, that there's a coming together that's really necessary and important here as well. And then also you brought up the idea of trust. And I think that that's a concept that we're probably going to be coming back to throughout, and really appreciate that. Any last thoughts before we bring on North Carolina and see you in a little bit?
My only thought too is that it really solidified our relationship with Creative Forces and for Americans for the Arts, because Hannah, you came to see what we were doing. You came to really experience it, to have that on ground community, understanding. You met members of the community that were veterans, members of places in the community that we worked with. And so I think that was a really, really important part in the growth and development of it, is your willingness to come and participate. And we will always be grateful for that. And it really solidified a measure of trust and a way forward with our work that we do as community partners as well.
Well, thanks for saying that. An amazing memory. And I think it brings up that really important part about showing up. And that's something that you all do every day, and something that we've heard so many times, that it's really important to show up to do this work. So thank you for your commitment to doing that. And we will see you in a few minutes. And I'm going to bring over here Anna and Danielle from North Carolina. And I have so many questions for the two of you. This is such an exciting partnership and one that has grown so much over the years. And I feel so privileged to get to talk to you and hear more about how you built it. But just to give everyone a bit more context, as a creative arts therapist, we like to call them CATs. So if you hear us saying CATs, we mean a creative arts therapist. So Danielle, as a creative arts therapist, and Anna, as a resident artist, how do you work together to bring participants to the table and really think about this in terms of outreach?
Well, I think the most important part, as I think about it, is that we work together. I mean, that is really, like, Anna and I are a pretty solid team, because it's pretty much just us. So that, requires basically both of us to kind of, be on the ball pretty much all the time. And if, one of us needs a little bit of extra help, we know each other well enough and know what we do well enough to kind of pick up a little bit of slack. But I think, for me working at the clinic, in some ways I can get very disconnected from the community part. I'm not a part of a lot of the things Anna does outside of our actual group. And, it's really important for us to, kind of let each other know what the needs are. And I remember telling Anna, like, I need a flyer to give to the patients that has more than just some information on it and my contact information, because that's not really helpful. And, it's amazing how quickly, with all the things she has to do, she, puts these things out. But I got a flyer, and every time I've needed an adjustment or I've had a idea about it, she's been great, just making sure that I have that, because every patient that I see, I give the community information, and I do not wait, even though we talk about this continuum that they're on, and it's sort of something we think about doing at the end of treatment. I do it right from day one, because there are so many things that kind of come out of doing that. But also, I want them to know ahead of time, like, this is what I'm going to keep mentioning, and I would like you to be part of this. And so I inform every patient. I give them that flyer. I tell them what it's about. I will take them down there. I'll meet them down there. In our virtual space, I'll meet them virtually. It doesn't matter what platform we're using or how we're doing it. I will be there, because having them feel comfortable means that they will more likely attend. Knowing that someone they trust and that they already know is going to be in that space, they will more likely attend. So, and Anna's great when they come in. If she knows they're a patient of mine, she treats them no differently than anybody else that comes in. But it's really important that that kind of process happens as seamlessly as possible. So, we don't make the member uncomfortable, and we let them know that they're welcome. And it goes far beyond that. I don't just talk to my patients. I talk to my coworkers, my colleagues. I talk to other creative arts therapists in the Creative Forces Network. They were all invited when we started our virtual platform to come and experience it, so they know what they're talking about, because of course, then we can, reach further than North Carolina, right? So this way, everybody talks about this program in an informed way. They know exactly what's happening. It's not just, here's a flyer and this is what we do, and they kind of forget. They can actually say from experience, I've seen these things happening. This is what they do on, every Tuesday night. And that's really important, because, it makes the outreach even wider. And then, of course, meeting those people down there, right? So if you're a creative arts therapist, that doesn't mean you're not having some concerns about, I'm going in this space and I don't know people here, what's going to happen. So I meet people down there. I've met every art therapist that works on Camp Lejeune with me, one that works at the air station down the road from us. I just recently let one of our creative arts therapist who is starting her work out in Washington come and see our program, because community is going to be something she's doing. So let her meet Anna, let her ask questions, and just kind of see how we run the open studio. All that's really important. And I feel like all of that information starts with Anna, because without her, I wouldn't have flyers to just give them and be like, there you go, we can look at this and let me know if you have questions, and help them through the process of figuring out how to use a QR code, whatever else they might need. So, hey, I didn't know how to use it until I did. So.
And I thought nobody was using them anymore until I was like, oh, they're still using them. And these are kind of awesome. So QR codes, you heard it here, folks.
Pro tip.
And my part in that process is, as she said, to make sure she has information about the program. But it's more than just having access to information about the program, because you are working with a population who is very aware of everything. They watch to see if you are comfortable in the space. And as far as our specific partnership goes, they watch to see if we are comfortable with one another, if we trust one another. If they see that that is there, then that leads to them feeling comfortable. That's the first part, comfortable in the space. And then it begins to develop into trust. And then it develops into loyalty. And then a step further, if we are very, very lucky, it becomes advocacy. Our members are our greatest advocates for this program, because another person who wants to maybe come down to the studio or be a part of the virtual space, they're not going to reach out necessarily to me or Danielle and ask, hey, what do you think about this space? They're going to reach out to another member who has been going for a while, right? Somebody that they know and trust. So yeah, I provide all the information that Danielle wants. I'm always available to answer questions, because I know that ultimately that leads to very good things for our patients and members. And I will tell you before we go any further that absolutely everything we do, in person, virtual, the continuum from clinical care to community, is all centered around member. For me, I refer to our people as members, and for Danielle, patients. Every single thing centers around that. Every decision, every bit of communication, every thought that we have towards building future programming, it all centers around that. And now I'll hush.
No, what an important and key tenet, I think, of your program from the beginning is this centering of the members and their health, their well-being, their quality of life, and thinking about that. And I'm curious if you can share, you've talked and touched on some really great thoughts about how you each work on outreach through your partnership. And now, can you share a little bit about some of the benefits for each of you of this connection, whether that's seeing a community landing place for folks, or someone, Danielle, who's bringing clinical-based knowledge to the table to support this? So how do you see those benefits, and how do you sustain that partnership between the two of you?
Well, for my patients, like I said, it's not, the continuum is definitely, an important part, but at any point in the continuum, the patient could really benefit from being down in this program. It really extends access to art. And for the majority of the patients that I meet, they do not do art. Most of them are very reluctant patients to start with. And it's sometimes really hard for me, to get a buy-in when they're just doing the art therapy part and not part of the community. And that's, part of me building that therapeutic rapport with them. But for some of them, there are just, there's only so many sessions in a week, only so many hours in a day. Like, there's not enough time for me to do all the things that they really need, because again, they've not really had experience with art materials mostly. So they can learn the skills that I don't really have the ability to teach. It's also really not part of art therapy to be so instructional. It's not skills based. You can do well in it if you don't have artistic abilities, but it really just helps me do those things that I can't really get to in the therapeutic session. So they can build those skills, which many of them, that keeps them coming back. They feel, pretty jazzed when they can do something they didn't think they could do before. And then it also, for my clinical goals that I set for them, it's really an extension of that social component, the relational skill development. That's really important stuff. And a lot of the patients that I have, they isolate and they don't go out into the community for various reasons. They don't really have, these supportive social circles that would be really helpful, especially as they go through treatment. So to be able to offer that to them in a space that I trust, because I work so closely with Anna, and she does help me really center the needs of the patients, the members, and that makes it even more inviting for them, because they feel like they're really being heard. And if they specifically ask for something, most of the time we can meet it, come pretty close to meeting it. And then there's also, improvement in creative self-expression. Like I said, most of them have no experience with that before they start art therapy. And really it's just in the doing. So there's nothing, special that needs to be taught or anything like that, which is why an open studio model really works, because they just need to get in there and do it. They need to start kind of creating this language that's all their own and very personal, that's made from making art. So the more they do it, the better they get at it, and it really just opens them up a little bit more, and also lets me see them in a different way. I'm usually online when we do the virtual stuff. I'm usually down at the Arts Council when we have the open studio in person, so I get to see them a little bit more relaxed, not so concerned about what weird thing I'm going to give them to do. They can just be.
That's great. And Anna, I want to give you a minute to talk a little bit about what's on screen, and then we will definitely bring you both back on later to answer a couple of the really good questions that have come through the chat.
Real quick, first I want to add just a little bit to what Danielle is expressing there, that as they move from the clinical space into community, and if you're hearing helicopter or osprey noise overhead, I live very close to a military facility. Sounds of freedom, y'all. So to add to what Danielle was saying, and very quickly, often Danielle and other creative arts therapists, they will work with the service member almost exclusively. Sometimes families will be brought in, in certain circumstances, but more often than not, it's the service member themselves. And as a community space, we really have the unique an amazing opportunity to stand in and offer something to not just service members and veterans and reservists and guardsmen. It's for families as well, because we feel all of this too. We bear all of this too. We navigate all of this too, and often with very little resources. And offering this kind of program in a community space where there are very little things that they have to do in order to gain access. Nobody has to have a formal diagnosis if that is something that needs to be navigated through. And it provides an opportunity for those clinical goals that are set in those sessions to grow and expand and maybe explore a little bit, but it also provides a way for them to do that with their family, with their support system, with their caregivers. And it is really amazing to watch these families not only reconnect to themselves and learn how to navigate a new normal, but to also remember how to reconnect with one another. And art provides an amazing way of doing that, because it meets them right where they are, expects nothing that they cannot give in that moment. So that is a beautiful thing. And this that you're seeing on the screen here, this is kind of a very visual way of breaking down how we do what we do. Everything in the middle centers around members' needs. Absolutely everything. All of these listy lists that you see here, everything revolves around member needs. I'm not going to read all of this to you. But everything, including the director of our Arts Council. I've also included a space for him, because it really does take all of us working together to keep this balanced, keep it accessible, and keep it going.
Oh, what a great segue. And thank you both for the work that you do and for sharing so much incredible information. And just so that everyone can rest assured, this webinar is being recorded, and the amazing graphic that they've put together is something that you'll be able to pause on and read further later. So thank you both, and we will see you in just a few minutes. And now I want to bring Glenda from Washington State on. So Glenda, thank you so much for being here today. I'm just waiting to see if, there we go. Hi, Glenda. Thank you so much for being here today. I know we're a Pacific time for you, so appreciate it. And would love to hear, as a state arts agency, different perspective than some of what we've heard so far. You're really coming at all of this from a bit of a different place. So I know you have a really strong relationship with the Washington Department of Veterans Affairs, the WDVA. So can you say a bit more about how that relationship came to be and how you continue to keep those lines of communication open with them?
Sure. But before I start, I just want to say I'm just gobsmacked with the work that's being done out there in the field, and listening to all of you talk about what you're doing in your areas has inspired me. And I'll bring that back to our small little group. Back in 2017, when the NEA first came to us and asked us to ask everybody actually who was involved in Creative Forces at that time to hold a summit, we took a look at our partners. At first, we looked at people in the arts and heritage field. We looked at some of our friends who are arts therapists. We looked at funders, but then we also thought, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Let's take a look and see if the Washington Department of Veterans Affairs could send somebody to be on our planning committee. And because our executive director at ArtsWA and the executive director at WDVA served together on the governor's executive and small agency cabinet, they got together, they put their heads together, and they have a very warm relationship. And Alfie Ramos, the executive director at WDVA, said, yes, of course she would join. And she sent herself to join the committee. So it was great to have the big boss come and be part of our planning committee. And Alfie actually came to every single committee meeting. She attended all of our summits, attended all of our convenings. And just as Fred and Alice were talking about how showing up brings trust, Alfie did some after hours work as well. She actually spent some time at a vet jam, which was sponsored by one of our grantees, Music Works for Veterans. And I don't know if she played the tambourine or sang or whatever, but Alfie actually went, and it really brought a lot of cachet to our program. And this past year, we had the privilege of continuing our work with Creative Forces through a demonstration project liaison, Brenda Maltz, who was the former Creative Forces creative arts therapist, at the Intrepid Spirit Center at JBLM, Joint Lewis Space McCord. Brenda is working closely with the staff at WDVA and with ArtsWA to solidify a mentorship program that will connect local arts practitioners to the military population that we want to serve. Without Brenda and without Alfie lending us her staff, we're just a small arts agency, and we aren't capable of doing that. And by the way, Brenda also helped us get a full-time Vet Corps volunteer at ArtsWA through the WDVA. So we're hoping that this will help fill in some of the gaps. But again, we're a small staff, but we hope that's going to change in the future.
That's I love that. And I think that, one really key theme that has been running throughout this whole session so far is this idea that even if you are a small staff, which so many of us are in the various arts organizations, no matter what level we're talking about, whether it's an on-the-ground arts organization, a local arts agency, a state arts agency, the capacity can be grown so much by partnering, and the outreach can be expanded so much by creating these relationships. I'm really inspired by this relationship built. And I just love to hear a little bit more about how you think this partnership with WDVA has impacted not only your capacity to provide programming, but also just how you think about your military programming.
Well, I don't know if the audience understands, but Washington is home to 8 active duty military installations, 18,000 National Guard members, veterans, retirees, and families, representing 10% of our population, call Washington home. And we host a major military medical facility and veterans health services across the state. And ArtsWA, as the statewide Arts Commission, understands that that's a population that we have not been able to serve. And that's one of our missions, is to reach out statewide to populations that we have not been able to serve. And so in partnership with the WDVA, we are committing to putting together a program. And this year, the program is going to be new. It's under our Community of Care initiative, and it's called the Community of Care Wellness, Arts, and the Military Initiative. And what we are doing is we've partnered with the WDVA. I guess maybe we're tag teaming on the governor, and we're asking the governor to put $3 million in the biennial budget this year to fund the program. Right now, we're doing it out of our own pockets, like everybody else. But with many of our legacy programs at the Arts Commission, it's funded through the state, albeit not funded very much, but funded. We want to make sure that this program is funded adequately enough that we can hire somebody to do the work and really pay attention to it. Just as everybody online here, our panelists are doing such great work, we need somebody to really pay attention to the work. And we have a whole plan. I don't know if I have time to tell you about what we're planning to do, but we're
possibly not quite enough for the full plan, because I have heard parts of the full plan, and I know there are many of them, but
we have some programs that we're going to connect to this new initiative, our Heritage Arts Apprenticeship Program. We know that veterans many of them have a great heritage background that they may be able to connect with in our Heritage Arts Apprenticeship Program. And we're also going to encourage community showcases of veteran artists to support their employment and boost their self-worth through this program, just as you're doing in Florida. But regardless of whether or not the governor is going to, we don't know if he's going to go ahead and include full or partial funding in this biennial budget. We know that WDVA and ArtsWA is committed to the work, because we believe that WAM, Wellness, Arts, and the Military, is an innovative way to launch, and sustain the efforts of what we've been working towards since we started working with Creative Forces.
That's awesome. Well, Glenda, thank you so much for sharing these great insights into partnerships and this really, really important partnership that you've built with WDVA. And thank you all for sharing so many great insights, and especially how we can partner across the clinical and community spectrum. So at this time, we also wanted to highlight some really wonderful partnerships that have developed over the past 18 months, in particular during COVID, and that can happen now across state lines and through the potential of virtual work. So Fred, Alice, and Anna, I'm going to bring you on, and I'm really going to set you loose, because I know that you don't really need any specific questions from me to chat away and share some incredible insights, but I'm going to give you a few prompts. I'll let you go. raise my hand when we have to hop over into the Q&A. So if we can bring Anna in also here, would just love to have you share a bit about the really special Florida-North Carolina partnership that you have formed and how it supported your work in outreach, how you maintain that partnership, and what you'd recommend to others looking to create a partnership like yours. So have at it.
We cry on each other's shoulders a lot.
This is true. This is true. And we may not need a prompt, but we do need a timer. So yes, be very definitive with the raising of that hand.
I think that we both North Carolina and Florida, that we've always had the intention to share ideas, to learn from each other, to find the commonalities of our communities and the uniqueness of our communities. And we've always been advocates from the very beginning that the more that we can learn from each other, the better we are. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, there were, everything went topsy-turvy, as you all know, and everything kind of ended up going virtual, or there were conversations about how do we go virtual. We in Florida, we were at a bit of an advantage because we were already virtual. We had our website and we did podcasts and videos. So people were accustomed to reaching us via screens. And in a national conversation that we had, where I think all of the demonstration projects were trying to get a sense of what's the impact? What do we do? What's happening with our veteran community? And a big point that was brought to the forefront was people just need to talk to each other. They need to be able to communicate. And we had a regional initiative called Vet Chat. And so we said, well, here's a great opportunity to create a point of destination once a month for veterans to come together, veterans and their families and caregivers to come together to have a national conversation about how we're feeling, what's going on in our communities. And so Alice and I, we had kind of really tried to create this forum just for a place where veterans could come and talk. And one of the big things that we all recognize is it takes time for that trust thing to happen. So it was building slowly. But one of the things that has made Vet Chat successful is the fact that Anna shared with us that because of the work that she was doing in her weekly gatherings, that they offered art prompts, an opportunity. So, and they would come on and talk, and folks would talk and be together, but then they would offer up an art prompt, an opportunity for things to think about, folks to think about that they could do during that session, that they could do afterwards at home with their family members. And we had been kind of open-ended. And when we began to do those various art prompts, and we did visual art prompts, we did music prompts, we did theater prompts, we had one of our writing prompts. One of our art therapists came on and just did a whole thing on how to take better pictures with your phone. So, and I think that that's one of the most important things. I saw one of the questions was around, outside of the clinical setting, one of the most important conversations for all of us to amplify is the utilization of art for health and well-being, for a way to communicate when your heart is feeling something and you don't feel necessarily comfortable about saying it. You might write it, you might do a painting, you might write a song, you might do a piece of movement, you might just write down 5 words. So to really continue to amplify the conversation, and those are the kinds of things that we talk about when we come together. We talk about what are our successes. We talk about what are some of our granting challenges. We try to learn and gain from each other. We serve as advocates to share with Hannah things that our veterans are saying in our various communities, or conversations that we're having, or a conversation that we have with someone from the Chamber of Commerce. How do we expand this? And it has, I speak for me to say, it has been really, really empowering. And many times, it's important to talk to folk who understand, who are swimming in the pond, the same waters that you're swimming in. And And so it's been really inspirational, and just professionally, it has really enhanced our ability to, I think, be better at what we do and learn more about the possibilities.
Alice?
I'll shut up now.
I would also say, because as you all see, Fred and I were a small team, and so is Anna. And so one of the other things that this partnership really allowed us was the creation of a sounding board, a team. It really did feel like, you know, as Fred said, we're not swimming in this pond alone, even though it's in two different states. We're dealing with a lot of the same issues as organizations and within the communities that we are working with. So the opportunity to just like sit down and brainstorm with one another, or sometimes even just vent a little about the frustrations of things that you really want to improve on, but you don't quite know how to get there and really continue to service who you are working with. I know that the pandemic was very scary when all of this started. And so knowing that we had that bi-weekly call that, okay, I have people that are in this boat with me that will help me navigate it right now. And I may not know all the answers, and that's okay. And they will tell me it's okay, even though it doesn't feel like it's allowed at that moment. And so it was very appreciative to have the ability to build that connection, and also get to know Anna's cats in her region, her creative arts therapist that she's worked with, and really engage with them as well as we've continued doing this work. So it's been very beneficial.
Yes, definitely added to that scope of knowledge, both from making me aware that it's okay to ask those questions and talk about topics that affect, you know, lift my eye from the work. In other words, lift it up to the horizon just a little bit and be aware of what's affecting the military populations at large, and think about how that impacts us locally and what we can do to be available to help with that. But, you know, sometimes helpers need help too.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a place that, for me, I'll speak, you know, as I should speak for me. Navigating all of this was difficult. And knowing that there was at least one soft place to land, it got me through. It got me through. And it offered me so much knowledge. I didn't even know where to start to look for how to think about navigating an in-person program with COVID restrictions. And I had no idea where to even start. And Alice really came in and thankfully offered a lot of help. Fred constantly told us that we can do that. You can do this. You can do this. You are on the right path. You can do this. So enormously helpful in a myriad of ways. And I will finish by saying we could not have made that connection without Hannah, Jacobson, Blumenfeld. And we are very, very grateful. And we see you. So thank you.
Yeah, we do. We do. Yeah.
Thank you all for, oh, I'm so sorry, Fred. I want to let you keep running, but I have 2 questions in the chat that I really want to get to, and then maybe we can circle back. And I want to just thank you, as always, for being so vulnerable and real. And that is so much a part of these partnerships. To me, what I've seen, and we talked before, each one of you, and I'd love to bring Danielle and Glenda back in here, because you've all talked about this idea of trust and how we build trust and how that happens. And so much of it is bringing our full selves and the reality of not knowing everything to the table. And on that note, let's try to answer some questions, and we'll let you know if we can answer them or if we don't know. So one question was from Linda Bailey, who says, we are a large community of all veteran retirees. We are not a clinical setting, but we know that art has many benefits outside of working in a clinical setting. How would our residents be able to benefit from the services or resources of Creative Forces? So we're going to take about a minute or 2. I'll throw this out to any of you, and then we've got one more as well.
Come to Vet Chat, have the Vet Chat experience. Come on the 3rd Thursday of every month and be a part of the conversation. Seek out. Absolutely, there are so many benefits. If there's a performing arts center near you, engage with the performing arts center. If you're not able to have a direct contact with them, or you find a stumbling block, then send us an email at, vetartsband.org, and we'll ring the bell at whatever performing arts center there is. So to really, first of all, thank you for being on this forum and asking that question. This is not just for patients or clients that are pre-prescribed. Our message goes out writ large to the veteran community, and we're here and available for any veteran, any veteran family member, any caretaker, and most importantly, we're really working very hard to connect with our active duty personnel as well, because our active duty families need to find out about this before they transition out, so they'll know that art is important. So ask questions and just really be involved. Go on these websites and, be connected to some of these groups. This is why it's important now for our community groups, our demonstration projects, to link up and to expand our resources so that we can be there for you to answer questions or help to guide you to places where you can have this experience.
Great. Thank you, Fred. And Glenda, I will pass it to you before our last question.
I just wanted to say that's one of the things that we're working really hard at the Arts Commission. Our program would actually build a funding program for arts organizations in the state who want to do the work, such as the Hot Shop Heroes at the Museum of Glass, or Pathway to Art, or Red Badge, any of those organizations. We know there are a lot of other organizations out there who would like to work with military populations, but we want to get them up to speed. We want them to have some military community competency. We want the cats to feel confident that, they can send the people to the organizations out there who want to do the work. So that's what we're working towards. And we're also building an asset map so that people can find them.
That's great. Thank you, Glenda. And okay, Danielle, I'll give you like 30 seconds and then I want to hop to our last question.
I just wanted to remind everyone we have a virtual program in Jacksonville as well. So we have people from Australia who tune in every Tuesday night. So please check that out. We have a Facebook page. I think that somebody put the link in the chat for everybody to find. So please do that. Join us.
There you go.
Thank you. That's a great reminder. And we also have a reminder to please think about applying for the Creative Forces grant program. So that too is a great option for you. And you can learn more about that on the National Resource Center. So one question that I definitely wanted to bring to light was from Heather Davis. And they say, it sounds like in the amazing work you all are doing, there are mostly identified clientele already. Any tips for when you are struggling to identify and reach the community veterans who aren't engaged with the VA, that live in rural communities, et cetera? And if we can take just a minute, Danielle, yes, please hop in there. Oh, your hand is still up. Sorry, Fred, you go for it.
I was just going to say that, again, a part of is to really outreach to find out what veteran supporting organizations there are. Be in touch with your Chamber of Commerce and see if there are businesses or, within your community that are really committed to connecting with the veteran community. Be in touch with your VFWs and your American Legions. Reach out if there is a VA hospital close to you. Make folk aware of what it is that you really want to do. And we have to keep the communication going in the pipeline, keep the word out that these programs are happening and that we're, available to support them. I think, I think Glenda, someone would say, you have to kind of go, sometimes you got to go to the folk, you got to go to where they are, go out and let them know, hey, we're doing these kinds of things. What would work for you? What are your interests? And there's a lot of talk on the national level about that outreach and just really going to and being with folk and communicating with them and making them aware of the fact that there are some intention and that you can be a part of helping to build it. So don't be afraid to go and spread the word and communicate beyond sort of the prescribed places where veterans gather. Churches are also another really, really great place to make connections as well.
And Hannah, I was going to say that that's part of our work with WDDA, because they do have a lot of outreach and knowledge of where to, who to talk to and where to go and where people hang out and things like that. So we're trying to, we're an arts administration. We're trying very hard to put the knowledge into the hands of the people that are actually going out there and doing the work.
That's great. That's great. So partnering is really key, clearly, in all of these conversations. And finding the right partners, I know, isn't always easy, but if you see the chat right now, there are lots of folks who are already jumping in saying, hey, I've got something. So don't be afraid to reach out, and please do reach out to us. We're all here for each other. And I think that's really key to partnering too. So I am seeing that we are 1 minute over. So I do want to wrap up, though I'm sure we could spend another 3 hours talking about this. And that is thanks mostly all to our incredible participants today, our panelists, Fred, Alice, Anna, Glenda, Danielle. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your thoughts, your experiences with us all today. Truly, truly appreciate you all, the work and the commitment that you do. And I want to just remind everyone that this webinar has been recorded. It will be available in the next week or so. And we will have another Creative Forces Insights on Serving Military Families webinar on November 10th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And I encourage you all to subscribe for these and other Creative Forces updates on our National Resource Center. And I know our link is in the chat. So thank you again, everyone, for participating. Thank you to our panelists, to our interpreters, and to everyone here today. We appreciate you. And in the words of our wonderful panelists, we see you. So thank you for the work, and thank you for what you do. Have a great day, everyone.
For more information, refer to the National Resource Center at creativeforcesnrc.arts.gov.